The SMS analyzes a carrier's on-road performance by converting the carrier's inspection and crash data into basic measures and percentiles. This conversion involves the application of several SMS design features. Violation severity. All roadside inspection violations that pertain to a basic are assigned a severity weight that reflects its association with crash occurrence and crash consequences. The severity weights help differentiate the levels of crash risk associated with the various violations attributed to each basic. The violation severity weights have been converted to a scale from 1 to 10 for each basic, where 1 represents the lowest crash risk and 10 represents the highest crash risk relative to other violations in the basic. Since these severity weights are basic specific, 2 weights that appear identical but are in different basics do not represent the same crash risk. For example, a 5 in one basic is not equivalent to a 5 in another basic. Instead, the 5 represents the midpoint between a crash risk of 1 and 10 within a basic. Severity weights for one basic should not be added, subtracted, equated, or otherwise combined with the severity weight of a violation from any other basic. Within certain basics, additional severity weight is applied to violations that resulted in driver or vehicle out-of-service orders. This additional severity weight for out-of-service conditions, as with the severity weight assigned to each violation, is based on analysis that quantified the extent of those associations between violation and crash risk, as well as input from enforcement subject matter experts. Adjudicated citations. States may issue a citation associated with the violation noted in the roadside inspection. Such citations may be subsequently adjudicated in a due process system. The FMCSA has implemented an adjudicated citations policy that impacts the use of roadside inspections violations in the SMS. Under this policy, violations can be removed or set to a severity weight of 1 in the SMS if the adjudicated citations associated with those violations results in certain outcomes. For violations to be considered for removal or set to a lower severity weight in the SMS, drivers or carriers must submit certified documentation of the judicial proceeding results through a request for data review in the FMCSA's data queues system to initiate this process. The results of the process will determine if the violation is removed, set to a severity weight of 1, or retained for use in the SMS. This process only applies to inspections conducted on or after August 23, 2014 and is not retroactive. Crash severity. Crashes are assigned severity weights according to their impact. Greater weight is attributed to crashes involving injuries, fatalities, and/or crashes involving the release of hazardous materials than crashes resulting only in a vehicle being towed away from the scene of the crash. Time weights. All on-road safety events are assigned a time weight. The time weight of an event decreases with time. This decline results in more recent events having a greater impact on a carrier's basic measures than older events. Safety events older than 24 months are no longer used to assess a carrier's safety posture in the SMS. Normalization. Basic measures are normalized to reflect differences in on-road exposure among carriers. The SMS normalizes for the number of driver inspections with driver-related basics, and vehicle inspections are used for normalization within vehicle-related basics. Therefore, the number of driver inspections normalizes the HOS compliance, controlled substance and alcohol, and driver fitness measures, while the number of vehicle inspections normalizes the vehicle maintenance and hazardous materials compliance basic measures. The hazardous materials compliance basic measure is further qualified to use only vehicle inspections where the carrier was noted as transporting placardable quantities of hazardous materials. While violations of the above basics are discovered during an inspection, a distinction is made for behaviors that usually prompt an inspection. For this reason, the SMS also normalizes the unsafe driving basic measure by carrier size, as this basic largely comprises violations such as speeding that initiate an inspection being conducted. Similarly, the crash indicator basic is also normalized by carrier size. Segmentation. The unsafe driving and crash indicator basics account for carrier differences by segmenting the carrier population into two groups based on types of vehicles operated. The segmentation ensures that carriers with fundamentally different types of vehicles and operations are not compared to each other. The two segments are combination or combination trucks and motor coach buses when these vehicle types constitute 70% or more of the total PU types in a motor carrier's fleet, and straight or straight trucks / other vehicles when these vehicle types constitute more than 30% of the total PUs in a motor carrier's fleet. Safety event groups. To further account for the differences among carriers when assigning their on-road performance, the SMS places carriers in safety event groups based on the number of safety events in which they have been involved. This tiered approach accounts for the inherently greater variability in rates based on small samples or limited levels of exposures and the stronger level of confidence in measures based on higher exposure. The safety event grouping also allows the SMS to handle the wildly diverse motor carrier population while ensuring that similarly situated carriers are treated with the same standards. Data sufficiency. The SMS employs data sufficiency standards to ensure that there are enough inspections or crashes to produce meaningful measures of on-road safety performance for carriers. In instances where the safety performance of a carrier can potentially lead to FMCSA interventions, additional data sufficiency tests are employed. These tests ensure that a carrier has a critical mass of poor performance data or a pattern of violations, such as having a minimum number of inspections with basic related violations before adverse action is taken. Percentile rank. The SMS uses on-road measures to assign a percentile ranking to each basic. Each measure is a quantifiable determination of safety behavior. Percentile ranking allows the safety behavior of a carrier to be compared with the safety behavior of carriers with similar number of safety events. Within each safety event group, a percentile is computed on a 0 to 100 scale for each carrier that receives a non-zero measure, with 100 indicating the worst performance. Percentiles are generated from measure of U.S. domiciled interstate and hazardous materials carriers. The remaining carriers, interstate non-hazardous material and non-U.S. domiciled, are assigned percentiles afterwards based on the equivalent measures to percentile relationships of the U.S. domiciled carriers. Carriers with percentiles above a certain set threshold that meet minimum data sufficiency requirements in a basic will be identified for potential FMCSA interventions. Investigation features. SMS assessments in each basic consider both percentiles and acute and critical violations related to that basic. If a carrier is found with one or more acute and/or critical violations within the past 12 months during an investigation, the carrier will receive a symbol in the corresponding basic. This symbol denotes that the carrier may be prioritized for interventions or further monitoring. The details of the violation will be displayed on the SMS website in the carrier's investigation results to that basic. Acute and critical violations. Acute and critical violations are recorded during on-site and off-site investigations. An acute violation, also known as a one-time occurrence violation, is triggered by non-compliance discovered during an investigation that is so severe that immediate corrective action is required. Examples of acute violations are using a disqualified driver and using a driver known to have tested positive for a controlled substance. A critical violation, also known as a pattern of occurrence violation, is triggered by a pattern of non-compliance related to the carrier's management or operational controls that is found during an investigation. A carrier must meet the following criteria for a critical violation to affect the basic prioritization status. Violations are discovered in at least 10% of the carrier's records checked during an investigation, and out of these records, a pattern of violations is found. Examples of critical violations are false reports of RODS and failing to maintain a driver qualification file on each driver employed. Basic prioritization status. A carrier's basic prioritization status is based on its on-road safety performance percentile and/or any acute and critical violations from an investigation related to that basic. FMCSA prioritizes carriers for interventions based on the number of percentiles a carrier has at or above the established basic intervention threshold, and/or if the carrier has been found with one or more acute and/or critical violations within the past 12 months during an investigation. If a carrier receives a symbol in a basic, the carrier may be prioritized for interventions such as warning letters and investigations, or may be subject to further monitoring.